will elect Senator Bernie Sanders as the next president of the United States of America.
Going into the 2020 Democratic primary race, Bernie Sanders seemed like an almost unstoppable candidate. The Vermont Senator had come in a close second place in 2016, and since that time his supporters remained active and dedicated to making sure that 4 years later, he would not falter. Amongst a crowded field of competitors, Sanders was a clear standout. His fundraising raised an astounding $180 million, by far more than anyone else, and he had by far more donors than anyone else. He also did it without super PACs or bundlers or campaign cash from billionaires. Bernie continued to demonstrate incredible energy with frequent rallies before crowd sizes that dwarfed those of his 2020 rivals. He kept a powerful grip on the youth vote and expanded his appeal in areas where he did not do as well in 2016. This time around he was a top choice amongst black voters and the favorite of Latinos. Bernie scored incredible early victories, winning the popular vote in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. His only clear loss in the first 4 states was South Carolina, a state that was a clear lock for Joe Biden throughout the entire election. Though Biden was the frontrunner since even before he declared his candidacy, his status as frontrunner was seen almost universally as incredibly vulnerable. After losing in the first 3 contests, his polling numbers fell dramatically and Sanders took the lead. With the moderate wing of the party fractured, their votes split amongst 4 possible candidates, the left had just 2 big choices, and Sanders was the clearly more popular option, at one point leading in the polls in nearly every Super Tuesday state. Had Sanders swept Super Tuesday, he would most certainly have solidified himself as the inevitable Democratic nominee for the 2020 election. For the first time since the rise of the New Democratic Caucus in the 1990s, a strong progressive would have a serious shot at becoming the President of the United States, one with the potential to be as transformative to American society as FDR. Heading into Super Tuesday, while Biden appeared to be gaining in the polls, Sanders still held the lead in most of the critical states. The left was ready to turn the page and write a new chapter in the history of the Democratic Party. All Bernie needed to do was win. With the most donors, the biggest crowd sizes, the best campaign experience. How could he lose?
No, it ain't Bernie, it is you. It must be you. And the whole point of the political revolution is that nobody, not Bernie or anybody else, can do it alone. We have got to do it together by the millions.
One of the biggest factors in the defeat of Bernie Sanders was the fact that these seemingly divided moderates decided to rally behind Joe Biden, both figuratively and literally.
And it is in the name of that very same goal that I'm delighted to endorse and support Joe Biden for president.
Pete Buttigieg, the clear leader in terms of delegate count, dropped out of the race and endorsed Joe Biden. While Buttigieg was not leading or even in second place in any Super Tuesday state, he still had a reasonable amount of popularity nationwide, and his endorsement was clearly helpful for Team Biden. Pete's endorsement, added to the favorable press coverage from his South Carolina victory, helped to give Biden a general boost in a number of states. Perhaps even more crucial were the endorsements of Amy Klobuchar and Beto O'Rourke, despite the fact that neither had the same amount of nationwide appeal.
Tomorrow, March 3rd, 2020, I will be casting my ballot for Joe Biden.
Beto was popular in just one state, Texas, which also happened to be the second largest Super Tuesday prize and by far the largest within reach of Joe Biden. On March 1st, polling showed Bernie leading Biden by just 3 points. Beto's endorsement of Joe Biden was perhaps the single factor that tipped the scales in favor of the former vice president. Amy Klobuchar too had popularity in just one state, another critical Super Tuesday prize, Minnesota.
And that is why today I am ending my campaign and endorsing Joe Biden for president.
Prior to Super Tuesday, Bernie and Amy each had about a quarter of Democratic support in that state. It was a toss-up between the two. But after Klobuchar dropped out and endorsed Joe Biden, his support level of just around 10% skyrocketed. Klobuchar's supporters followed their leader, and Joe Biden managed to lock down a victory in a state where just days prior, he was projected to be an almost certain loser. The only powerful centrist who did not immediately line up behind Biden before Super Tuesday seemed to be Michael Bloomberg, who was apparently still hoping his bottomless self-funded campaign money would translate into victories at the ballot box. But Bloomberg ended up being significantly less potent than even the polls had indicated. The billionaire managed to secure a victory in American Samoa and nowhere else. With Pete and Amy lining up behind Biden and Bloomberg a non-entity in the race, the moderate wing of the Democratic Party went in a single day from disjointed to united. But their unity would not be enough to bring down Bernie alone. As it would turn out, progressives were more fractured than they might have appeared. Despite stepping aside in the race, Andrew Yang did not endorse Bernie Sanders. Perhaps it would seem because, as it later came out, Joe Biden had offered him a position in the White House should he secure the presidency. Tulsi Gabbard, who like Yang would also eventually endorse Biden despite her generally progressive platform, remained in the race for Super Tuesday. While she certainly didn't pull many votes away from Bernie Sanders, he might have benefited from positive press coverage had she dropped out prior and endorsed him. That didn't happen. Far bigger a factor was Elizabeth Warren. Prior to Super Tuesday, she was not leading in any Super Tuesday state. It was clear that she had no path to the presidency left. Still, she remained in the race, and her progressive platform meant that she was very likely pulling the votes of people who might otherwise have supported Sanders. In one state more than any other, Warren could have made a big difference, her home state of Massachusetts. Prior to Super Tuesday, Bernie appeared to be winning there. Biden was clearly gaining ground in the state, but he was still in third place. Had Warren dropped out and endorsed Bernie, the state almost certainly would have gone to Sanders. Her support added to Sanders would have been 48%, clearly enough to trump Biden's 33.6%. Warren's refusal to support Sanders very sadly seemed to be more about personal gripes than politics, per se. The two had sparred over a Politico article that alleged that Sanders volunteers were instructed to criticize her electability, and over the details of what had been said between the two regarding the electability of women in a private one-on-one conversation. I don't want to relitigate the trivial slights that seem to have poisoned their relationship, but according to one of Warren's surrogates, one of the reasons she decided not to support Sanders was the online behavior of his supporters after their relationship had hit some serious hurdles. There were a lot of nasty emojis and tweets and other vituperative and misogynistic comments directed towards Elizabeth. And that was a moment Bernie could have stood really clearly and said enough. Miss Weingarten said, "I'm a pretty tough broad and it affected me, and I don't get affected by this much anymore." That's right, so Sanders might have lost Massachusetts over his supporters' snake emojis. Whatever the case, Warren broken heart Bernie meant Massachusetts eggplant raindrops Biden. As a result, USA flag heart sleepy eyes, or USA flag orange clown. After losing Super Tuesday, the possibility of a Bernie Sanders comeback has been and continues to be quite unlikely. Despite recent reports that seriously damaged Joe Biden's campaign, like the new Me Too allegations that have come out against him, we're still unlikely to see Bernie bounce back. With the current pandemic keeping people indoors, one of Bernie's biggest campaign advantages, massive rallies, is neutralized. In the face of this, Bernie has pioneered a new campaign tool, the virtual campaign rally.
Hello, everybody.
But it's hard to see how this will have the potential to make Bernie a plausible leader once again. Nationwide, his poll numbers currently sit in the low 30s, while Biden's are in the low 50s. To win, Bernie would not just have to close this 20-point difference, he would also have to surge beyond it significantly enough to make up the difference in the delegate count. Currently, Bernie trails Biden by over 300 delegates. Biden is less than 800 delegates away from securing a majority. While there is always a chance that unexpected things can arise and make sudden, drastic, and unpredictable changes to the status quo, at the moment, it appears virtually impossible for Biden to lose the Democratic nomination. That said, his victory over Donald Trump in the general election is nowhere near assured. Unfortunately for Democrats, liberal-leaning independents, and anyone who wants to avoid a second term for Trump, It isn't all that difficult to answer this question about Joe Biden in the general election. How could he lose?